Hello class, welcome to George's Marvelous Medicine, Day 5. When we last left off, George was mixing up his medicine. He had it on the stove and he was cooking it up so the pills he put animal pills in it, and the pills could boil down. He also put makeup and stuff from the bathroom and stuff from the kitchen and stuff from the garage and all sorts of things into his medicine. And he's boiling it up. And I had you guys make some predictions of, one, do you think that Grandma's going to take it? Well, probably, since it's a story about his medicine. And secondly, what would happen if she did take it? And I got all sorts of great guesses from she might pass out, she could explode, it might actually help her, and it might taste good, she might be nice. Some people say it would work. Another person said explode into thin air. She might go crazy. Yeah, we had several people guessing she might explode. So we'll see what happens in this chapter. Hopefully we'll get there. He's going to add a little bit more to his paint before he tries, or to his medicine before he tries to give it to Grandma. Chapter 6, Brown Paint. George turned off the heat under the stewing pot. He must leave plenty of time for it to cool down. Why do you think it has to be cooled down? I think it's because Grandma might notice if she's given a hot medicine and she'd wonder why it was hot. Then she wouldn't take it. When all the steam and froth had gone away, he peered into the giant pot to see what color the great medicine was now. It was a deep and brilliant blue. Ooh, that's a problem. Do you remember what her medicine normally is? It has something to do with the chapter title, Brown Paint. What do you think he's going to add to fix this? It needs more brown in it, George said. It simply must be brown, or she'll get suspicious. George ran outside and dashed into his father's tool shed, where all the paints were kept. There was a row of cans on the shelf, all colors, black, green, red, pink, white, and brown. He reached for the can of brown. The label said simply, dark brown gloss paint, 1 quart. He used a screwdriver and prized off the lid. The can was 3/4 full. 3/4, so that's 3/4, 3/4. So that's over halfway full. So it's most of the way to the top. It's also 75%, just for fun. He rushed it back to the kitchen. He poured the whole lot into the pot. The pot was now full to the brim. He has a lot of medicine. And do you remember how much he's supposed to give Grandma? 1 teaspoonful, or 1 spoonful. What is he going to do with all that extra? Very gently, George stirred the paint into the mixture with a long wooden spoon. Aha! It was all turning brown, a lovely, rich, creamy brown. Where's that medicine of mine, boy? Came the voice from the living room. You're forgetting me. You're doing it on purpose. I shall tell your mother. I think it's kind of funny the way the author has her getting all excited about something that might not be so good for her. I'm not forgetting you, Grandma, George called back. I'm thinking of you all the time, but there are still 10 minutes to go. You're a nasty little maggot, the voice screeched. A maggot is like a small white worm. It's often in like decomposing or dead things. You're lazy and disobedient little worm, and you're growing too fast. George fetched a bottle of Grandma's real medicine from the sideboard. He took out the cork and tipped it all down the sink. so he threw away her real medicine. Just a reminder, once again, we're not doing this at home. So make sure you're, doing none of this at home. He then filled the bottle with his own magic mixture by dipping a small jug in the pot and using it as a pourer. He replaced the cork. Here's a picture of George pouring the medicine in. Had it cooled down enough yet? Not quite. He held the bottle under a cold tap, and a tap is where the water comes out of the sink, for a couple minutes. The label came off in the water, but that didn't matter. He dried the bottle with a dishcloth. All was now ready. That was it. The great moment had arrived. "Medicine time, Grandma," he called out. "I should hope so, too," came the grumpy reply. The silver tablespoon, it was a tablespoon, not a teaspoon. The silver tablespoon in which the medicine was always given lay ready on the kitchen sideboard. And sideboard's just like a table that runs along the wall. Sometimes it has some cupboards and stuff underneath. George picked it up. Holding the spoon in one hand and the bottle in the other, he advanced into the living room. Chapter 7. So this chapter is pretty long, so we'll only get us started today and we'll finish it tomorrow. Chapter 7. Grandma gets the medicine. Grandma sat hunched in her chair by the window. The wicked little eyes followed George closely as he crossed the room towards her. "You're late," she snapped. "I don't think I am, Grandma." "Don't interrupt me in the middle of a sentence," she shouted. "But you'd finished your sentence, Grandma." "There you go again," she cried. "Always interrupting and arguing. You really are a tiresome little boy. What time is it?" "It's exactly 11 o'clock, Grandma." "You're lying as usual. Stop talking so much and give me my medicine. Shake the bottle first, then pour it onto the spoon, and make sure it's a whole spoonful." "Are you going to gulp it all down in one go?" George asked her. "Or will you sip it?" Why do you think George might ask this question? Because she might recognize that it tastes funny if she's just going to take little sips. "What I do is none of your business," the old woman said. "Fill the spoon." As George removed the cork and began very slowly to pour the thick brown stuff onto the spoon, he couldn't help thinking back on all the mad and marvelous things that had gone into making this crazy stuff. Shaving soap, hair remover, the dandruff cure, the automatic washing machine powder, the flea powder for dogs, the shoe polish, the black pepper, the horseradish sauce, and the rest of them. Not to mention the powerful animal pills and powders and liquids, and the brown paint. "Open your mouth wide, Grandma," he said, "and I'll pop it in." The old hag opened her small wrinkled mouth, showing disgusting pale brown teeth. "Here we go," George cried out. "Swallow it down." He pushed the spoon well in her mouth and tipped the mixture down her throat. He then stepped back and watched the result. It was worth watching. Grandma yelled, "Owie!" and her whole body shot up into the air. Whoosh! It was exactly as though someone had put an electric wire through the underside of her chair and switched on the current. So she's got electrocuted, sounds like? Or as if she was electrocuted. Up she went like a jack-in-the-box, and she didn't come down. She stayed there, suspended in midair, about 2 feet up, still in a sitting position, but rigid, now frozen, quivering, the eyes bulging, the hair standing straight up on end. So those pauses in there were actually put in by the author. You can see the way he wrote it. He wrote those 3 dots, which tells the reader that they should take a pause because it's taking him a while to take it all in and notice. And then here's a picture of Grandma in midair, suspended, frozen, staring off into space, hair sticking out. Is something wrong, Grandma? George asked her politely. Are you all right? Suspended up there in space, the old girl was beyond speaking. The shock that George's marvelous mixture had given her must have been tremendous. You'd have thought she'd swallowed a red-hot poker, the way she took off in that chair. And so a red-hot poker would be red because the metal got so hot that it turned red. Then she came down with a plop back into her seat. Call the fire department, she shouted suddenly. My stomach's on fire. It's just the medicine, Grandma, George said. It's good, strong stuff. Fire! The old woman yelled. Fire in the basement! Get a bucket! Man the hoses! Do something, quick! Cool it, Grandma, George says. But he got a bit of a shock when he saw smoke coming out of her mouth and out of her nostrils. Clouds of black smoke were coming out of her nose and blowing around the room. By golly, you are on fire, George said. Of course I'm on fire, she yelled. I'll be burned to a crisp. I'll be fried to a frizzle. I'll be boiled like a beetroot. George ran into the kitchen and came back with a jug of water. Open your mouth, Grandma, he cried. He could hardly see her for the smoke, but he managed to pour half of the jugful down her throat. A sizzling sound, the kind you get if you hold a hot frying pan under the cold water, came up from deep in Grandma's stomach. So that's the cold water hitting whatever was hot, is sizzling. The old hag bucked and shied and snorted. She gasped and gurgled. Spouts of water came shooting out of her, and the smoke cleared away. The fire's out, announced George proudly. You'll be all right now, Grandma. All right, she yells. Who's all right? There's jerky jumpers in my tummy. There's squigglers in my belly. There's bangers in my bottom. She began bouncing up and down in her chair, quite obviously not comfortable. You'll find it's doing a lot of good, that medicine, Grandma. Good? She screamed. Doing me good? It's killing me. So the medicine's definitely doing more than one thing. First she was suspended in the air, then she's on fire, then she's, jumping all over, jumping jacks in her tummy. Then she began to bulge. She was swelling and puffing all over. Someone was pumping her up. That's how it looked. Was she going to explode? Her face was turning from purple to green. But wait, she had a puncture somewhere. George could hear the hiss of escaping air. She stopped swelling. She was going down. She was slowly getting thinner again, shrinking back and back slowly to her old, shrivelly self. How's things going, Grandma? George asked. No answer. Here is a picture of Grandma when she's all swelled up. I think if I were George right now, I would be pretty nervous about all the things that happened to my grandma, because this medicine has never been tested. Grandma's kind of be like being the guinea pig. So I would be nervous that I could do something really dangerous. So tomorrow we'll figure out what else happens to Grandma with this marvelous medicine. And then we'll probably have another little check-in quiz. So